She was just the quiet waitress in a small-town diner, until a faded tattoo exposed a secret long buried in the mountains of Afghanistan. When a retired soldier recognized the mark of a missing recon unit, everything changed. What followed wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of a healing circle that would awaken a town, one story at a time. Welcome to my channel. I still remember the first time I saw her. It was a blistering July morning in Hamilton, Montana, the kind where the sun starts biting before you've even had your first sip of coffee. I was sitting in my usual corner booth at Big Earl's Cafe, halfway through my second cup, when the new waitress came out of the kitchen like a shadow sliding across linoleum. She was tall, maybe 5 feet 9 inches, with her dark hair twisted into a no-nonsense bun, and sleeves rolled down tight to her wrists despite the 100-degree heat. She moved different than most folks around here. Controlled. Efficient. Every step measured. No wasted movement, like a chess player who's memorized the whole game. No one knew where she came from. Name was Harper. Just Harper. Said she'd been passing through and saw the help wanted sign taped to the window. Earl, being old and tired and short on staff, hired her without asking too many questions. People in Hamilton talk. They notice. They noticed Harper didn't smile much. Didn't joke around with the regulars. Never stayed after her shift for beers at Denny's bar down the road. And always wore long sleeves. Even in August when the pavement shimmered like molten glass. The young bucks said she was weird. The gossips whispered things like, probably ran from something. One woman swore she saw a tattoo peeking from Harper's collarbone. Said it looked military. Said she knew trouble when she saw it. But me? I just watched. From my corner booth, for mornings a week. Same black coffee. Same slice of toast. I watched her refill cups before anyone asked. Noticed how she stood with her back to the wall, eyes tracking every person in the room like she was waiting for something, someone. My name's Roy Winston. I'm 78. Retired Army. Logistics. Saw some bad years in Iraq that never left my bones. And I'll tell you this, some things can't be faked. Not posture. Not instinct. Harper moved like a soldier. Maybe not now, but once. I'd bet my pension on it. There's a crew of us who come in most mornings. We call ourselves the Coffee Platoon, me, George, and Freddie. We served in different places, different wars. Doesn't matter. War carves out the same look in a man, no matter the decade. That stare when you're seeing something that isn't there anymore. And Harper? She had that stare. One morning, after she set a piece of cherry pie in front of me without a word, on the house, I caught a glimpse of something as she turned. Her sleeve had slipped up just a bit. Not much. Just enough to see the edge of a tattoo. It stopped me cold. Because that tattoo, I knew it. It was a broken compass wrapped in barbed wire, barely visible, faded like it had been there a long time. I hadn't seen that symbol in over a decade. Not since my nephew, Danny, sent a photo home from Afghanistan. It was on his forearm. Same exact ink. Same exact mark. It was the insignia of Echo Team 9, a unit that vanished during a recon mission in the Karengal Valley. Officially, they were declared MIA. No bodies. No black boxes. No closure. Danny was one of them. Gone at 24. Just a kid. I stared at that mark like I was seeing a ghost. My fork clattered to the plate. Harper froze. Saw the recognition on my face. I need to get back to the kitchen, she said, her voice soft but tight. Wait, I croaked. Please. She hesitated. Just a beat. Then walked away, disappearing behind the swinging kitchen door. George leaned over. You okay, Roy? But I wasn't. Not even close. That night, I dug through the old shoebox in my closet. The one with Danny's letters, his dog tags, and the photo, the last one he ever sent. Him and 7 others on a dusty hill. All grins, all hope. And there, plain as daylight on his arm, the compass with barbed wire. I brought the photo with me the next morning. Waited until Harper brought me coffee. I set it on the table, gently. This was my nephew, I said. She didn't look right away. Her hands trembled slightly as she topped off my cup. Danny Winston, I said. Echo 9. Afghanistan. 12 years ago. Now she looked. Her eyes darkened with recognition. She lowered herself slowly into the booth across from me, like her legs might give out. I thought nobody would ever say that name again, she whispered. She picked up the photo. Her thumb brushed across Danny's face. Her mouth trembled. Then the tears came, silent, hot, and unstoppable. Danny saved my life, she said. Twice. My throat closed up. I hadn't cried in years, not since the day the army called and told me there were no survivors. But that morning, in the quiet clatter of Big Earl's cafe, with the waitress who wore long sleeves and the ghost of my nephew between us, we both wept. And I knew. She wasn't just another drifter. She was the last living member of a team that had vanished. And she'd been carrying their memory, alone, for over a decade. I didn't sleep much that night. My head kept replaying what Harper said. Danny saved my life. Twice. In the quiet of my kitchen, I stared at the photo again. That group of young faces, all dust and sweat and mischief. The kind of look soldiers get when they still believe in something. My nephew grinning like he had a secret the world wasn't ready for. Now I knew the truth. That secret wasn't just his. The next morning, I got to Big Earl's before the sun did. The door was still locked, but the kitchen lights were on. I waited by the bench out front until I saw Harper through the window, tying on her apron. When she noticed me, she paused for a second, then unlocked the door. "You're early," she said, not unkindly. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Thought maybe you couldn't either." She stepped aside and let me in. The place smelled of bleach and black coffee. Earl's two sacred rituals. She poured us both a cup and nodded toward the booth. We sat down. This time, I let her talk first. "My real name's Dana Carver," she said quietly. "Staff Sergeant, Echo 9 Recon. Afghanistan, 2011 to 2013. She didn't look up, just stared into her coffee like it held the whole war inside. "I shouldn't be here," she continued. "Not in Montana. Not anywhere, really. Officially, I died with the rest of them. MIA turned Kia. They gave my mother a folded flag and a speech. I wasn't ready to be alive when I came home." Her words came slow, brittle, like everyone took effort. "After the ambush, I got separated from the others. Danny stayed with me. I'd taken shrapnel to the leg. Couldn't move fast. He carried me, half the way to the extraction zone." She swallowed hard. When he realized the others were gone, when the radio went silent, he didn't panic. He just kept going. Said it wasn't about survival. It was about the promise. "We bring each other home." That's what he kept saying. I nodded, tears stinging behind my eyes. That last night, we were out of water, out of ammo, out of hope. He made me swear, if I made it out, I'd live quiet. That I wouldn't chase ghosts. That I'd honor them by staying alive. She smiled faintly. So I did. I walked out of that valley. Didn't tell anyone who I was. Slipped into the cracks. Figured the army could keep their medals. I just wanted to disappear. "You did," I said gently. "Until yesterday." She looked at me, and for the first time, there was something in her expression besides grief. Maybe relief. Maybe fear. "It's not just the ink that gave you away," I said. "It was your eyes. You look like someone who's seen everything and came back carrying the weight of it." She stared at me, unblinking. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she whispered. "Didn't want to dig it all back up." "You didn't," I said. "You brought it home." The cafe was still empty when Earl shuffled in 20 minutes later. Harper disappeared into the kitchen, and I stayed quiet about everything we'd discussed. But things had changed. Subtly. Permanently. That afternoon, I made copies of Danny's photo. Sent one to a friend down at the VFW, another to a guy I know in Billings who does quiet work for vet families. No names. Just a note that said, "One made it out. She's here. Let's take care of her." The next day, Freddie and George showed up early. They sat across from me, eyes full of questions. I didn't give them names or details. Just said this. "She's one of ours." And that was enough. They nodded. And from that moment on, Harper, Dana, wasn't just the quiet waitress with long sleeves anymore. She was family. Word traveled faster than coffee cooled in Hamilton, Montana. That's just how small towns work. But this time, the rumors had a different edge to them. Less gossip, more curiosity. Less malice, more mystery. It started small. A couple of regulars began tipping more when Harper brought their meals. Teenagers who used to crack jokes about her sleeves suddenly kept their voices down. Something about her presence, subtle, steady, sharp, began to unsettle the judgmental ones and comfort the rest. But of course, not everyone caught on. It was a Thursday morning when the incident happened. Harper was making her usual rounds, coffee pot in hand, when a group of out-of-town contractors took a booth near the front. They were loud. The kind of men who called every waitress sweetheart and thought every conversation needed to be at maximum volume. She approached their table calmly, poised like always. One of them, thick-necked, with wraparound sunglasses perched on his cap, reached out and tugged lightly on her sleeve as she poured. "Come on now," he said with a grin. "It's 90 degrees out. Let's see what you're hiding under there, sweetheart." The others laughed. She didn't flinch, didn't say a word, just pulled away slowly and moved on to the next table. But I saw it. Her jaw tightened, not with fear, with control. That kind of tension soldiers learn when they want to react, but know better. I stood up, walked over, slow and deliberate, like a man with arthritis and unfinished business. I leaned one hand on their table and looked the loudmouth dead in the eye. "You ever serve?" I asked. The man blinked. "Huh. Serve?" I repeated. "You ever put on a uniform? Sleep in the dirt? Get shot at by people who didn't care about your politics?" He shifted uncomfortably. "No, but I." "Then maybe keep your hands to yourself when you talk to someone who did." He looked away. His buddies stared at their napkins. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't have to. I turned and went back to my booth. Harper passed by a minute later and paused just long enough to meet my eyes. "Thanks," she whispered. "You ever want me to handle it different?" I said. "You just say the word." She gave the faintest smile. "I think you handled it just right." That evening, something changed. When I returned for dinner, the only night that month I came back for a second visit, I noticed the sleeves. They were rolled up. Not by accident this time. Not because she was working hard and forgot, but deliberately, purposefully. Her forearms bore marks that weren't for decoration. On the left, just like Danny's, was the broken compass wrapped in barbed wire, worn and faded but still fierce. On the right, 7 initials arranged in a semicircle. I didn't need to ask. Those were her people, the fallen. Freddie was the first to speak when she brought our table its food. He nodded toward the tattoos. "That's not just ink," he said. "That's memory." Harper set down our plates and stood still for a beat. The cafe was quieter than usual. It was like everyone felt something different in the air. She nodded once, then said, simply, "They deserve to be remembered." That night, George dug out his old flag from the Gulf War. It had been in a storage box in his attic since '92. The next morning, he brought it in and asked Earl if he could hang it on the wall near the cash register. Earl, crusty but sentimental, agreed. The flag went up, and right underneath it, a little frame with a typed message Freddie had printed on his office computer. "Some scars don't fade. Some names can't be forgotten. We serve. We carry. We remember." Harper didn't say anything when she saw it. Just touched the frame lightly, nodded, and went back to her shift. But I saw the shine in her eyes. The kind you don't get from onions or kitchen heat. The kind that says someone sees me. It was Sunday morning, and Big Earl's cafe was packed. Churchgoers in their pressed denim and ironed flannel, young couples nursing coffee like hangover medicine, and the regulars tucked into their corners like stones in a creek bed. Harper moved through it all with that quiet grace of hers. Still rolled sleeves. Still alert eyes. But something in her had softened, just a little. Maybe it was the flag on the wall. Maybe it was being seen for the first time in years. Or maybe she was just tired of hiding. Walter, a Vietnam vet with Parkinson's who usually needed help carrying his tray, had taken a particular liking to her. He always sat in the same booth near the jukebox, tapping his wedding ring nervously against the Formica table. When Harper brought him scrambled eggs, he reached out and rested a hand gently over hers. "You remind me of someone," he said, his voice trembling. "She was the bravest girl I ever knew. My field nurse. Saved half our unit." Harper smiled, just a little. "Sounds like she was something special." "She was," Walter said, voice thinning. "And so are you." Later that afternoon, after the lunch crowd died down, I asked Harper if she wanted to sit with us for a few minutes. Just me, George, and Freddie at our usual booth. She hesitated for the briefest moment, then sat down across from me. Freddie poured her a cup of coffee without asking, like she'd always been part of the circle. "We've been talking," George said. "We're thinking of starting something." "Something like what?" Harper asked. "A weekly meet-up," I said. "Veterans only. Open to all branches, all eras. Just a place to talk. Remember. Maybe laugh, maybe cry. No pressure." Freddie leaned in. "And we want you to be part of it." Harper looked down at her coffee, then back up. "You really think people want to hear about ghosts?" "We're all haunted by something," I said. "Doesn't mean we walk alone." She nodded. Slowly. Thoughtfully. "Okay. I'm in." We decided to call it the Quiet Watch Circle. Met every Wednesday at 4 p.m. after the lunch rush, but before the dinner crowd. The first meeting, it was just the four of us. We sat at a back booth and shared a few stories that had never made it into the official records. George talked about the night his convoy got pinned near Kandahar. Freddie opened up about losing his best friend in a helicopter crash over the Mekong Delta. Then Harper spoke. She didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't dramatize it either. She just told us the truth. About Echo 9. The op gone sideways. The team ambushed in a mountain pass they'd been told was clear. No air support. No satellite coverage. Just 8 soldiers against a swarm. They died well, she said softly, voice steady. Bravely. No panic. Just determination. Like they knew they were holding the line for something bigger than themselves. She paused. Looked down. I was the comms lead. Last one out. Danny got me to the cliff's edge. I jumped. Shattered my ankle on the rocks below, but I lived. No one spoke. Because some stories don't need follow-up. They just need space. Before we broke up for the evening, I pulled something from my coat pocket and placed it in front of her. It was an old compass. Bent and worn, still smeared with desert dust. Danny's, I said. They mailed it back to me with his effects. Said it was found clipped to a rucksack with no body. But I knew. I just knew it was his. Harper picked it up like it was made of glass. I gave it to him the day he deployed, I said. Told him it always pointed true, even in the dark. She pressed her thumb against the cracked casing, then looked at me, eyes shining. It did. After that first meeting of the Quiet Watch Circle, things started to shift at Big Earl's in ways you couldn't measure in tips or foot traffic. You felt it. The cafe had always been a place to grab eggs and coffee, but now it was something else. A sanctuary of sorts. Veterans started showing up midweek, quiet men and women who normally kept to themselves. A guy named Marcus with Gulf War patches on his biker vest. A widowed Navy nurse named Jolene who brought a tattered journal she never let leave her hands. Even young Kyle, who'd only just come back from a tour in Syria and still flinched when someone dropped a spoon. Harper made space for them all. She didn't command the room. She didn't speak unless someone invited her to. But she watched them, not with suspicion, but with the kind of deep awareness that only comes from sharing the same scars. Invisible ones. And they responded. It wasn't long before someone brought in a folding table to hold keepsakes. Not flashy, not decorated, just a simple table near the back wall. At the second meeting, Marcus laid down his buddy's dog tags. Jolene added a faded Red Cross patch. Kyle contributed a unit coin, still shiny, still warm. Harper added a photo. It was the same one she had touched the first day she recognized Danny's face. 8 soldiers. Sand and sun. No helmets. Just tired smiles and arms thrown around shoulders like brothers and sisters in arms. She placed it in the center of the table and walked away without saying a word. That table? It became a kind of altar. We didn't call it that, but that's what it was. A sacred space for remembering those who didn't get to come home, and for the ones who did, but not in one piece. One afternoon, a boy named Jake came into the diner. He was maybe 20, wore a backward ball cap, and had that cocky, empty swagger you see in kids who haven't lived through a winter that mattered. He pointed at Harper's tattoos while she was pouring coffee. You with a gang or something? He said, laughing. The whole place went still. Harper didn't flinch, just looked at him and said, calm as a midnight walk. Yeah, we called it Echo 9. Our territory was 6,000 miles that way. Not many made it out. The words hit him like a tire iron. Jake left without another word. But the next day, he came back. Sat in the booth farthest from the door. Didn't say much. Just listened. Week after week, he kept showing up. Eventually, he started asking questions. Not dumb ones. Real ones. What's it like when you hear silence where there should be voices? Why do some people come home and others don't? And one I'll never forget. How do you know when you're finally safe again? Harper answered that one. You don't, she said. You just get better at carrying the weight. After that, Jake stopped wearing the backwards cap. Started helping clear tables. Holding doors. He even brought in a recruiter's pamphlet one afternoon and sat nervously beside Freddie, asking what it really meant to serve. You won't find glory, Freddie said. But you might find purpose. Jake nodded like he understood. And I think he did. A few days later, I found a note slipped under my coffee cup. Crumpled, written in pencil, barely legible. Tell her I get it now. Sorry I was a jerk. I'm gonna try and earn it. Jake. Harper never said a word about it. But I saw her tuck that note into the same notebook where she kept the names of her fallen. Names written in ink. Stories carried in silence. That was the thing about her. She didn't carry pain like a wound. She carried it like a flag. About 6 weeks after the first Quiet Watch circle, I walked into Big Earl's and saw something that stopped me cold. The old corkboard on the far wall. The one that used to hold faded ads for tractor repair and half-torn babysitting flyers had been cleared off. In its place was a handmade patchwork of photos, medals, and handwritten names on index cards. At the top was a piece of wood, sanded smooth and stained dark, with a simple message carved into it. In honor of those who carried us home. Harper had built it. Earl told me she came in after closing the night before, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. Hammered the board up herself. Arranged every item by hand. No fanfare. No ceremony. Just purpose. I stood in front of it a long time. There were black and white photos from Korea. Dog tags from a Marine who hadn't spoken more than 3 words since I met him. A worn-out purple heart ribbon tucked beneath a picture of a woman in desert camo, smiling beside a tank. And right in the center, the compass. Danny's. Mounted on a tiny bracket, still dented, still scuffed. Facing true north. Harper passed behind me as I stood there. She didn't say anything. Just placed a fresh cup of coffee at my table and gave my shoulder a light squeeze. That touch said more than words ever could. Later that week, we got a visit from someone none of us expected. Walter's daughter, Laura. She came all the way from Missoula after hearing her father, who used to barely leave the house, was showing up to something called a Quiet Watch circle. She didn't believe it at first. Said he'd stopped going out in public years ago, ever since the Parkinson's got bad and the nightmares got worse. But now here he was, at the back booth every Wednesday, sipping coffee and telling stories he hadn't told in 40 years. Laura sat in on one of the meetings. Brought a photo of her uncle, who'd died in Vietnam. When it was her turn, she shared a letter he'd written the night before he was killed. Read it out loud, her voice shaking. He wrote that he wasn't afraid to die, she said. But he was scared no one would remember him. The whole room went silent. Then Harper stood up, walked to the board, and tacked the letter beneath the compass. He's remembered, she said quietly. A few days after that, Harper did something that caught us all off guard. She took off her apron and walked out onto the cafe floor during lunch rush. Rolled up her sleeves. And spoke. Not loudly. Not like a speech. Just loud enough for people to pause, forks midair. I used to think being invisible was the only way I could survive, she said. That blending in would help me forget what I left behind. She looked at the memorial wall, then at us. But we're not meant to forget. We're meant to remember. And carry it. Together. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. Even Earl, crusty old mule that he is, wiped his eyes with a dish towel and muttered something about allergies. That evening, after we closed up shop, Harper and I sat out back on the loading dock, watching the sun sink behind the trees. You know, I said, if Danny could see all this. She shook her head. He'd tell me I was late to the party. We both chuckled. Then she pulled something from her pocket and handed it to me. A patch. Fabric. Faded and frayed. It was the original Echo 9 insignia, the one from her first deployment jacket. I think it should stay here, she said, where people can see it. I didn't argue, just held it for a moment, then stood and walked it inside. Pinned it to the top left corner of the board, just above Danny's compass. Later that night, Harper added 7 names underneath it. One stitch at a time. Veterans started showing up from counties over. Not because of flyers or social media posts, nothing like that. Word just spread the old-fashioned way, one voice to another, passed quietly, like a secret you're finally ready to share. By mid-September, Big Earl's was packed every Wednesday. Folks showed up in old uniforms, or hats with faded service patches, or sometimes just silence. That told us enough. Harper was still the anchor of it all. She never claimed leadership. Never needed to. Her presence alone was enough. Solid, steady, always watching, always there. And that's what so many of us had been missing. Not leadership. Not therapy. Just someone to stand beside while we sorted through the echoes. One afternoon, a man named Carter came in. He looked older than time. Walked with a cane that seemed to carry more weight than he did. Didn't say a word at first. Just sat at the memorial wall for a good half hour, staring at a photo someone had added of a Huey helicopter mid-descent. When he finally came to the counter, Harper served him herself. You serve? she asked gently. 3 tours, he said. Nom. Infantry. She nodded. My dad was there. Not your unit, but close enough. He glanced down at her tattoos. You? Echo 9. Recon. He raised his eyebrows. No one talks about recon units, he said. That's why we're still here, Harper replied. To talk now. He smiled, a tiny, weary thing, and joined the table at the back without another word. That same evening, I brought in a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were Danny's medals, the flag they'd given my sister at the memorial, and a little cassette tape labeled "For Uncle Roy, Don't Laugh." I'd never played it. Didn't have the heart. Harper sat beside me as I laid everything out on the table. You ready to hear it? I asked. She nodded, then went to the kitchen and came back with an old tape player she must have scavenged from who knows where. We plugged it in. Hit play. Danny's voice filled the cafe like a ghost returned. Hey, Uncle Roy. If you're hearing this, I guess I'm not around to complain about you eating all the bacon at breakfast anymore. The voice was younger than I remembered. Cocky, nervous, hopeful. He told dumb jokes. Talked about Montana weather. Said he missed Mom's fried chicken. And then, toward the end, his voice changed. I don't know what's going to happen out here, he said. But I want you to know I'm not scared. Not really. You taught me how to keep my feet on the ground when everything else falls apart. And if something happens to me, tell them we mattered, okay? That we did something worth remembering. When the tape clicked off, no one spoke. Harper reached out and put her hand over mine. We'll tell them, she said. The next morning, the town paper left a voicemail asking if they could do a feature on the Quiet Watch Circle. Some kind of hidden hero story. Harper declined. No headlines, she told me. Some stories are too sacred for ink. I agreed. A few weeks later, we had our biggest crowd yet. Veterans from 5 towns, some with spouses, a few with kids. Young Jake showed up in uniform, just back from his first drill weekend with the National Guard. Looked 10 pounds heavier with pride. He brought 2 coffees. One for Harper, one for the empty seat beside her. For whoever needs it most, he said. I saw Harper smile. Not the tight, polite smile she gave strangers. A real one. The kind that grows out of shared burdens and quiet victories. That afternoon, she gave a talk. Not a speech. Not rehearsed. Just a story. About the last night she saw her unit alive. They knew we weren't making it out, she said. But nobody cracked. Nobody lost their head. We passed around the last chocolate bar in the group pack, shared it like communion. Danny joked it was the worst brand, and we all laughed, even though it tasted like rubber. She paused, took a breath. I've never had chocolate since. That line hit us all hard. It wasn't about candy. It was about memory. About holding space for the people we couldn't bring back. About what we carry and what we leave behind. After the meeting, Jolene handed Harper a small tin box. Inside was a single square of that same military-issue chocolate. Years old. Still sealed. Harper stared at it like it might break in her hands. You don't have to eat it, Jolene said. Just know it's yours. You earned it. Harper nodded. And for a long moment, she said nothing. But we knew. Some debts you don't repay. You carry them. One square at a time. By October, mornings in Hamilton started biting through jackets. The trees around Main Street flamed orange and gold, and Big Earl swapped out the window fans for space heaters that hummed like distant engines. The Quiet Watch Circle kept growing. Not in noise, but in depth. One Wednesday, a high school senior named Lydia walked in with her grandfather. She wasn't military, just curious. Her granddad, a Korean War vet, had stopped talking about the war decades ago, but now here he was, holding a coffee and talking to Carter about frozen river crossings and letters never delivered. Harper found Lydia sketching faces from the memorial wall in a little spiral notebook. Art school, the girl explained, blushing. But I want to tell true stories, not just the loud ones. Harper smiled and nodded. These are the ones that matter. That day, Harper added something new to the wall, an old scarf, dusty tan, frayed at both ends. Belonged to our spotter, she said. Best eyes in the unit. Used to wrap this around his neck, even in the heat. She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. We started calling that part of the wall the circle within the circle. The place where names didn't just rest, they breathed. Jake, our young recruit, had a notebook now, too. Not sketches, questions. Practical ones. Like how to pack light for a cold bivouac or what to say when your buddy doesn't make it home. I caught him one afternoon asking Harper if the nightmares ever stopped. They fade, she said, but they never disappear. You just get better at waking up. Later that week, I found her outside, smoking a cigarette, first time I'd seen her do it. She offered me one without asking if I still smoked. I didn't take it, but I stood beside her while the sun dropped behind the ridge. You okay? I asked. She exhaled slowly. I think I'm learning how to be. We didn't say much after that. Some conversations are meant to happen in silence. The first snow came early that year, just a dusting, but enough to hush the town. Big Earl's windows fogged up with breath and bacon grease. Inside, the circle met as usual, but Harper wasn't there. That hadn't happened since the first gathering. I checked with Earl. He just shook his head, told me she needed a morning. Didn't say why. Around noon, the bell above the door jingled. Harper walked in holding a weathered envelope in both hands, like it might tear in two. Found this in a box I hadn't touched in years, she said, barely above a whisper. Didn't know I'd kept it. It was a letter, addressed to her. From Danny. She didn't read it out loud, just sat at the booth and opened it, hands trembling. The room went still. After a long pause, she looked up and said, he wrote it 2 weeks before the op told me he had a feeling something was coming. But he wasn't scared. Said if anything happened, he hoped I'd find someone who could remind me that we mattered. She folded the letter carefully and slid it into her pocket. I think I did. Jake asked if she wanted to hang it on the wall. Harper shook her head. Not yet. Some things you hold close. That day, we passed the coffee slower. Lingered longer. Before leaving, Carter approached her. Put something in her hand. A single bullet casing, polished, with 3 notches cut into it. Only piece I carried home, he said. My squad. It's yours now. Harper didn't cry, but she closed her fist around it and held it to her heart. As the sun slipped behind the trees, I thought of what Danny once said on that tape. Tell them we mattered. We were. We did. And Harper was making sure of it, one memory at a time. Winter settled in, slow and heavy. The kind of cold that makes your bones feel older than they are. But Big Earl stayed warm, not just from the heaters or the cinnamon rolls, but from what the circle had become. More than a meeting, more than memory. It was home. Harper showed up every week, sleeves rolled up, scars and symbols on full display. She smiled more, laughed sometimes, still watched every exit, every newcomer, but now it was less caution, more care. One Wednesday, she brought a box. Inside, 8 laminated cards, each with a name, a photo, a few words. Echo 9, written at the top. She laid them out in a circle on the big table. These are my people, she said. They deserve a seat here. No one touched the cards. We just sat with them. Let them be. Later, Harper tucked them into a handmade book, leather-bound, stitched tight. She placed it on the memorial wall with a note. Please read. Please remember. And people did. Kids. Tourists. A woman passing through town who left a note folded inside. My brother served too. Thank you for honoring him. Jake shipped out in January. Before he left, Harper gave him Danny's compass. You bring this back to me, she said. No matter what. I will, he promised, standing straighter than I'd ever seen him. The day he left, a bunch of us gathered at the bus station. No speeches, no flags, just coffee and paper cups, firm handshakes, and quiet nods. That night, Harper added one more item to the wall, her own patch. Echo 9. Frayed, faded, and finally at rest. This place doesn't need a uniform to serve, she told me. It just needs people who care. Spring came, eventually. The snow melted, and the river started moving again. Life returned to Hamilton in green buds and longer light. But the circle stayed strong. And Harper? She stayed too. Still pouring coffee. Still listening. Still carrying them. Her 8 ghosts, and maybe a few of ours. One cup, one story at a time. We never called her a hero. We didn't have to. She knew. And so did we.